It is my pleasure to introduce you to our panelists, Bernard and Denise Coley and Ruby Rendon. We are grateful to our panelists for taking the time to share their experiences with us. Denise Coley is the founder and co-managing partner of Enable Your Vision, a firm that provides supplier diversity consulting to drive economic vitality for diverse businesses, corporations, and the communities in which they reside. She's also a person living with Parkinson's since 2018. Her husband, Bernard Coley, is an executive with 50 plus years of experience in the high technology industry and is also a principal in Enable Your Vision. Bernard has had a lengthy career of volunteer work, including community development projects and facilitating and mentoring entrepreneurial development in underserved and indigenous communities. Bernard and Denise co-chair the special interest group Black Diaspora, which focuses on closing health disparity gaps in underengaged communities, educating health resource and research organizations on engaging communities in a culturally sensitive manner, bringing Black patient advocacy perspectives to Parkinson's research, and increasing Black community participation in clinical research studies. He and Denise are members of the Parkinson's Foundation's Research Advocates cohort, and Bernard is an advisory board member of the California chapter of the Parkinson's Foundation. Bernard and Denise work together on numerous initiatives to increase awareness of PD and PD resources in underserved communities of color. Their Parkinson's story can be found in PD Movers, We Keep Moving, an anthology of stories from Parkinson's and care partners. Ruby Rendon is the primary caregiver for her mother, Corina Villalobos, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 17 years ago. Ruby has been involved in the Parkinson's community as a care partner and research advocate ever since. Ruby began volunteering for the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center at the Barrow Neurological Institute in 2012. In 2019, she was hired as coordinator of their Hispanic outreach program, and in 2022, Ruby was promoted to the position of Hispanic outreach program coordinator. Ruby enjoys family time, loves spending time with her kids, grandbaby, and friends, and will never say no to a Disney trip. Let's start off with a question for Bernard and Denise. And what is your advice to Parkinson's researchers looking to build trust with diverse communities?
Well, first, let me begin by thanking ADPA and you for this opportunity, and Dr. Gilbert to speak with this particular audience. This is right in the sweet spot of who we like to talk to, because the future of the changes that we would like to see rest with you. So this is indeed a great opportunity, and we will endeavor to focus on pragmatic and practical tips as we go into this. So let me begin with a very important one. You've heard the word trust used over and over again. I am so ecstatic to hear that, because we've been preaching trust for many years, and as a cornerstone of moving forward. And so let me talk about building trust in its position. So first, you must, when you're trying to reach an underengaged or indigenous population, you must connect with them prior to giving content. So many organizations and groups we've encountered are rushing in to tell a community about the services they offer and what wonderful things they can do for them, but never pausing long enough to connect with those individuals. So on behalf of those communities, I'm here to say connection before content. You must, from a practical and pragmatic stand, connect with these communities. So what does that mean? Okay. So what that means is you need to be culturally sensitive in the way in which these communities absorb information, seek services, and are looking for opportunities to also contribute to you. It's a misnomer that many people in the indigenous and underengaged communities aren't interested in research. In fact, many of them are. You've heard several people say, well, but they didn't know, so they weren't informed. That's one. But there are others. It's also a question of finding an environment, again, that they trust. So what does that mean? From a pragmatic standpoint, that environment must be safe. Safe. I'll say that again. The environment must be safe. We have lots of historical evidence about what happens when the environment is not safe. We don't have a lot of information being shared about environments that are safe. So, number one, that's part of the awareness building we have to do. But again, the point I'm trying to make is first you must connect, hear what the challenges are. I heard several of our speakers talk about actually talking and listening, being empathetic, trying to understand and walk in their shoes in order to pass along information. So connection before your content. Now, the sad part about it is it's going to take, realistically, when we're consulting and talking to organizations, we tell you, it's about an 18-month process to gain trust. You must be present to win that entire time before you get to some of the things you want. So, second pragmatic tip I will give you is the pragmatic tip about how do you shortcut some of that. Well, the first is you must go into the community and find the trusted partners, people who already have credibility, people who have already gained trust, who may be willing to share their credibility and trust with you because you've shown them that what you have to offer is of value to the communities. So don't think of them as gatekeepers, but think of them as bridges. So you must find these bridges and their trusted partners. Now, some of them I've heard, already today, people say, well, what about the church? Yes, but it could be community centers. It could be the senior center. It could actually be youth centers or the schools, okay? But there are places where there are trusted partners. And if you communicate with them and partner with them, as in real partnership, real collaboration, as in equal partners, you respect them for what they bring, and they'll respect you for what you bring, you can reduce the amount of time it takes for the community to trust you. But again, the respectful, balanced, collaborative, equal partnership. Denise, would you like to add?
So as Bernard was talking about being empathetic, one thing about being empathetic is how you are received. Are you fully listening? So when I tell people, when you go in, make sure that you're really listening, sitting up straight and looking the person eye to eye, and carefully taking things in without trying to have any judgment. You must be respectful and intentional. And one of the best ways to earn trust is to learn something about each other. So you're sitting, listening very carefully. You tell your story of how you got to the place where you are, whether you're a care partner or a trusted person or the person with Parkinson's. And take about 2 or 3 minutes just to give a good idea of who you are, what you represent, and why you're there. And then pause and then say, would you tell me your story so I can find out what you're looking for so we can go further. And if you go through that exercise and you're really listening fully, then you can develop an action plan of what you're going to do next. And this is the sequence of what we do when we go to any community, but it is not a one shoe fits all. It's not one time do you do it. You have to do it multiple times because in order to be trusted, it has to be several rounds of getting to know a person, getting to know the community, getting to know the family. Because if you come in once, you're like everybody else who comes to the community. You come in once, get the information, and then you say goodbye. And everybody says, they just leave us stranded. So why should we give the information? And the most important thing is when you're listening fully, you'll notice if there's no other conversation, the conversation's all on your end. If it's all on your end,
there's no trust.
No trust, you're in deep trouble. You're going to have to come back many more times before you can get to that point.
Thank you so much for sharing that valuable advice. That was so helpful. And the next question we have is for Ruby. Ruby, did your mother's doctor bring up the idea of getting involved in Parkinson's research to her?
Not to be honest with you, not at the beginning. She started participating in research when we joined the services here at the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center. I started getting a little bit more involved in the programs that they had, and we were barely like, this. I'm talking, about 10 years ago. we were thinking about how can we get our patients to participate in research. It wasn't just it was we were trying to do it not with a medication or a treatment or anything like that. So um, we have a program here that is called promotoras, or community health workers. So we started little with a survey with from one of our organization, and even though sometimes they had to go to the home of the patient, we had a really good outcome of it. We also started doing education about research, and as Hispanics or Latinos, we try to do it in like Bernard and Denise, in a cultural sensitive way. We try to make put a little humor in there, and use words that they could understand in Spanish about some terminology of research. So our promotoras had a presentation, but it was kind of like dynamic and more like a little play about research, and they had a village of research, and it was like the double blinded because the doesn't see what the wife does and the daughter does, things like that. So that's how we started, and then we got a grant and we did a voice research. So we had to give them a laptop, teach them how to use it. But this time, they knew that we were doing something for their good, and it wasn't just about just like Bernard and Denise said, we're not gonna be here just for this and then we're gonna leave. We're staying here. We're doing this for you guys and all that. So after that, then my mom, yes, started participating more. She has done two studies, and right now she is in a clinical study actually for DBS. So yeah, and she's really excited. A lot of people say sometimes, DBS is a brain surgery, and then she went and got 4 leads instead of 2. She's like, how? Why did she do that? What's going on? And um, at first, when my mom was diagnosed, she didn't want anybody to see her. She put her hand in her pocket. After we started learning more about it, and she said that if she could be a voice for the community, then she was all in. She was doing interviews. She was doing, we go out to the community, to the Mexican consulate, to the churches, to a lot of community events, and that way, it's not just me talking about Parkinson's; it's them talking about Parkinson's too. So we started doing that, and now when we approach her with that she was a good candidate for this study, she's like, okay, yes, I'll do it. Yo lo hago. And I know, like a lot of people say, it's not gonna be probably a cure. It's not gonna be found for her, but it will be for future generations. And what more can we leave to that for them than me, saying, oh, my great grandma or my grandma participated on this, just a legacy, I guess you could say it.
That is really special. Thinking about that, what you shared about the ways of talking about research, and what Denise and Bernard said about creating a safe space, I want to open the next question to all three of you. I would love to hear your thoughts about the barriers that exist to involvement in PD research for communities of colors, and how can those barriers be addressed?
Let me start with that one. This is one of the questions we get most often. So again, sticking with pragmatic tips, let me just start off with the title, Representation Matters. So if you have an environment where no one looks like you, no one talks like you, no one understands your sense of humor or your approach to difficult topics, then it's not going to be a safe environment. So a very practical thing is to take the step and understand that representation matters. The book that we're in is receiving obviously rave reviews now and is being distributed widely. But the main thing is our community is receptive to it because right on the cover, they see us. No, more important, they see themselves. They see it just screams culture to them. They see people that look like them. They see people that look like their relatives. They see people that look like their community. And so already they are looking at going inside the book. And by the way, let me say this piece before I forget it. What we're talking about isn't just helping our underengaged communities. We're talking about practical tips that should be part of your DNA and utilize across the board. So the things that are being learned now, as you're bringing in patient voices from these communities, turns out to be very helpful across nearly all of the PD community. So that's just a little aside. Denise mentioned willing to listen for understanding the respective needs. So one challenge is people often unknowingly go into an environment with preconceived notions. I know it's a challenge in its work, but the practical thing you can do is instead of just going in and trying to understand, if you spend some time with somebody who you have already developed a relationship with and talk to them about how you should enter. One of the stories that Dr. Shaw, who coordinated the PD Movers book, tells is how she spent 18 months, hear that term again? 18 months going into the community and churches with a community activist and learning and being quiet for months and just listening and realizing, oh my God, I thought the situation was X, and she quickly learned that it was very different. Else, she also learned that many things that she assumed were going to be different weren't. They were just like her own community with a little slight twist on it. So let me give you a specific example here. In my community, when we have difficult decisions to make, the family talks about it over a meal, or the family gets together. Now, we often tell organizations, if you don't put the meal in there, you're not getting our community. You can have all the webinars you want, all the panels you want, fine. But what you've got is a barrier. Until you get that meal there, that comfort time, that discussion of family going, it's not safe, and it's not the environment where they're going to share. So for us, that is part of the culturally sensitive thing that must be there. And it must be a dialogue. And what that means is don't talk at me, talk with me, share. We go back and forth to get where we're going to go. But it's not just you have all the expertise. So what I like to say is anytime you're in an exam room, there are at least two experts. One is the medical individual who has all the scientific training, the specific days, but the other is the patient who has all of the expertise on the lived experience. And when you're with a colleague that you respect because of the respect for their particular experience, then you will share. Things will go. The dialogue will flow. Denise?
All right, I'm going to say 2 points because I know time is short and I want Ruby to have a chance to talk. One is you have to emphasize why it's important and what is going to happen, because people want to have that information because there's been so much constructive research. So keep it in mind why and what, and Ruby, it's on you.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think for us also, it is for us it's not just translating a program, from English to Spanish. It is, like Bernard said, changing that and put it towards the community, and by doing that, you're able to have more people participate, and be willing to trust you, little by little, like like he said. I think that's how we are able to do that. For example, we on Sunday, November is Parkinson's caregivers month. We celebrate our so sometimes I have to work on a weekend because it's the only time that the our patients have, because sometimes parents or grandparents are taking care of their grandkids because their kids still working, because it's a day that they have to rest. So on Sunday I'm gonna have my picnic de la familia. It's like a family picnic to celebrate our caregivers, and of course I'm going to have food because that's something important. We're going to have music because we love music. We're going to have raffles, and we also are going to have a somebody that's going to take care of the little ones to keep them entertained while their parents or grandparents receive the information. For us, it's important to do that. I don't want somebody to tell me, oh, I can't go because I don't have anybody to watch. My nephew or my grandkid. And that's the thing for us is as Latinos or Hispanics. If you invite me, you know that it's not just me going. It's my three kids, my grandbaby, and my mom, and my cousin, and everybody else in the family. So I think that's one of the things that I probably say. And one of the things that um, I was listening to the doctors that were talking before, and how do they connect with the community. I think using the resources that are already out in the community, such as community health workers or promotores, are the best way that you can get. They are the bridge to those communities. And like Bernard and Denise said, it's not just a one-time deal. Once you get into our community, it's really hard for somebody to. For example, if I have somebody that I think it's good, it's gonna be a good impact for my community, I don't let them go. I'm like, we have this, we have this. Do you want to participate in this? I have a webinar. I want you to do a talk. And that's the way that you keep finding, these resources, and go out to the community, and little by little start doing that. Tocando puertas, like we say, knocking doors, and that's how you're gonna find your way in, and make sure that you're there to stay, not just for one time. That's what I did, and then I'm after 12 years, I'm here.
So I have time for one last question, and I think this is something our researchers in the audience are all dying to know. Do you have any recommendations for them for just how to get the word out in diverse and under communities? What should be the steps they can take? Say that they have a study, they're recruiting. What advice would you give them?
I think and we talked about this earlier. It's not about just checking that box of Latino, Hispanic, Black, African American, Native, or any other race. If you really want to have participation, if you want to have Latino or Hispanic participation, have your study in Spanish. Try to do it in a different, like all as many languages as you can, and also see what ways of communication your community is using. For example, us, we use a lot WhatsApp. If you have a group of WhatsApp, send the information there. That's how it gets distributed. Most of my things that I do, I send the message in WhatsApp and it gets distributed like that. See if they're using Facebook, Instagram, like all those social medias that are out there. I think is one of the best ways. And I think also you there's sometimes a miscommunication between the people who's doing outreach and the clinicians. Sometimes if you see there's a good candidate out there, tell them, hey, I'm going to if you have your clinic and your research department, it's in the same place, you tell them, hey, I'm going to bring somebody from research and talk to you about this study that I think you will qualify for. It doesn't have to be medication. It could just be something, just keeping up with how you're feeling and things like that. Start little, or whatever, you start little or start big. I think having more communication with that department will be what you can do.
Let me
Thank you,
wrap
Ruby.
this up by saying,
I'm sorry. I think, yes, if you have any thoughts, Bernard, certainly if you can share some thoughts before we wrap up.
a quick final comment. This kind of effort needs to be in your DNA, meaning you don't just do it just before you have a research and you're trying to recruit research project and you're trying to recruit. Your organization needs to embody this, be already out in the community doing activities, so that when the research comes along, they're already out there and have built relationships. They're already working with people. And if your team is inherently diverse, if you have patient voice already integrated into your process, then you simply turn to people representing that community and say, how should I get these materials out? And they'll tell you this works best here, this, so you go see, etc. It's a big challenge and a message to you if you're trying to figure it out, because you don't have a diverse team and you don't have a relationship in the community. So if you don't, the first thing I'd say is bring them in before you need them. Get the voice in, build a relationship, and then when you need it, it's available to you. Would you agree, Ruby? And
Absolutely.
So I would say Ruby and Bernard gave great information. You have to think about the audience. Who are you going after? Do they have internet? If they don't have internet, are you going to put it on the radio? Are you going to put it in flyers? Are you going to put in the coupon books? You also have to depend on the neurologists, the MDSs, the social workers, and people who are in the environment who have information, and tell them, go and look. For those who are really proactive, go to the researchers at the various hospitals, signing up to be unknown when something's going on or that you're interested in a certain area. And the last tip is support groups. Support group leaders get a lot of information, and they're in the community, and they are more than happy to share.
And they're trusted.
Yes, thank you so much. And with that, I just want to thank Bernard, Denise, and Ruby once again for generously agreeing to devote their time to being a part of this panel. And before I hand this over to Dr. Gilbert to wrap up, I just want to share that APDA has educational, programmatic, and support resources in Spanish and Chinese that you can use to help your patients. We have many webinars and broadcasts in Spanish, and we also have publications in Spanish and Chinese that you can download and print out during a clinic visit, including a Parkinson's handbook and a Parkinson's exercise guide. You can also order any publication for free on our website. And in addition, anyone interested in ordering a PD Movers book, which features the beautifully told story of Denise and Bernard, as well as the stories of a number of other Black people with Parkinson's, can do so on APDA's website. We will place the URLs in the chat for our webinars and publications. And another way to access all of our resources is through APDA's resource library.